Please join me for a moment of prayer. Almighty and ever-living God, we come to this moment in anticipation of a word from you. God, hide me in the shadow of the cross so that people will see you and not me. Let the words be yours and not mine. And for all this, I ask in the name of your Son, Jesus, the Christ. Amen. On the morning of April 27th, 2015, the funeral of Freddie Gray occurred at the New Shiloh Baptist Church in Baltimore. At approximately 3 p.m., violent protests erupted at the corner of Reisterstown Road and Liberty Heights Avenue in Northwest Baltimore. And we as a people watched in horror as a neighborhood was destroyed. A CVS pharmacy became the visual representation of the widespread damage, and many people, looters, and just some folks out for their own gain, burned and destroyed an inner city neighborhood. Just so that we are clear, both the rioters and the police had dirty hands in this transaction. Everyone has a part in what happened, just so that we are clear. The National Guard was called out, schools were closed, and Major League Baseball, for the first time in its 100-plus year history, played a baseball game in a completely empty stadium. And people were horrified. However, this has been a long-standing and simmering problem in the city of Baltimore. And Freddie Gray's death, allegedly at the hands of 6 police officers, was merely the match that lit the gasoline can that was already set to explode. Lest you think I am being dramatic about what happened in Charm City in April, let me give you a little history. There's a long-standing history of unrest in Baltimore, approximately 6 decades worth. Some of the problems started back in about 1954 when, under orders from the Supreme Court, schools were told to integrate in the case Brown versus the Board of Education. Even more problems occurred when illegal and illicit drugs started flowing into these inner city neighborhoods, and yet another set of problems happened in April of 1968 when the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was gunned down on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Even more problems came up when good, blue-collar union jobs moved out of Baltimore to places unknown and unseen. There's even more. How about redlining, where people could not get mortgages in inner cities or they could not get insurance in inner cities? I want you to know that poor people were being kept in perpetual poverty, and all of this has blended together to make a very toxic stew. So, all of this became evident to the world on that cool April afternoon, and many people and pundits immediately started speculating about the motives and the machinations of the protesters. Those people, some said, need to get jobs and stop looting and stealing. Those people, some said, are a disgrace to their race. Just so you know, I heard some people who look like me say that. Some of these folks are acting no better than animals. They should be in a zoo and some should be shot. I heard that said, both in person and on television. When are these people going to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps? I mean, I get it. Nobody was there to help me. And let me stop right there. That is one of the biggest lies ever told in history. Everybody has had somebody to help them. If you don't believe me, watch this. Someone seeing potential in you and giving you a chance, baby, that's somebody helping you. Daddy makes a call to a friend, a golf buddy, as it were, to give you an internship. That's helping you, whether overt or covert. How about this one? Knowing somebody who knows somebody. I call you, you call them. There's a job given. That's knowing someone. Just in case you don't get it, everybody has had some help. Or in the words of the poet John Donne, no man is an island. And the sirens go off. I love it. Remember I said that in the Baltimore interaction, no one has clean hands? So let me go on and talk about us. The church has some answering to do for its response as well. But before we talk about that, I have some questions for you. How do you respond when someone insults your child? How do you react when someone in a position of authority dehumanizes you and your child? What do you call the person who does this? I would tell you what I would call them, but this morning I can tell you that the answer today and who did this, his name is Jesus. Yeah, Jesus. You know Jesus. The Good Shepherd. Jesus, otherwise known as Emmanuel, God with us. Jesus, 1/3 of the Trinity. Oh, and today is Trinity Sunday. Jesus, I am the Father and the Father is me. Jesus, you know, the one who told the woman at the well to go your way and sin no more. Jesus, you know, Jesus, executed on Friday as a criminal, resurrected in power on Sunday. That Jesus. And this morning, just so that we are clear, I came to Manchester to tell you, the good people of the Trinity Church, that in this interaction with this woman, Jesus got it wrong. He comes out of this interaction looking less than heroic. He was wrong. And just before y'all throw me out the doors and tell me never to come back, I'm going to tell you that the Jesus in this story is not a nice man. And if I were honest, if I were really honest, Jesus is a total jerk. You don't believe me? Look at the text. Jesus wants some me time, so he goes on vacation. But like all good prophets, his reputation precedes him, and when he gets there, a non-Jewish woman comes up to him for help. Can you imagine how difficult it was for this Greek woman, Syrophoenician by race? How difficult it was to come to this Jewish teacher and ask for help? However, like most mothers that I know, there is nothing that she will not do to help her child, especially when her child is sick. So we have a sick woman we have a woman with a sick child approaching the one person she knows who can grant her the request that she has, and he calls her child a dog. What? Did you just call my child? So, in my biography, my mother's name is listed. I loved, Mary Alice Johnson Settles was a fearless woman. And I'm going to tell you right now, had Mary Alice had that interaction with Jesus, there would have been some healing going on, but it would have been on Jesus. Mom, I can hear Mom. Did you just call my child a dog? Forget about this purity law stuff. Did you call you called my baby, which means that she came out of me, so you have been calling me. Did you just call me a... My preaching professor in seminary, the Reverend Dr. Valerie Bridgman, put it this way. She said, and I'm totally paraphrasing her, she said, can you imagine Jesus relaying this conversation to his mother? Can you imagine that dinner conversation? Mama, guess what? Okay, so I went on vacation and I was trying to get some rest, and this woman comes up to me and I healed her daughter, but first I called her up, beep. And I can just see her, you what? Have you lost your mind? I would not have wanted to be Jesus at dinner on that Thursday night at that table. I'm going to go on and put that out there. And before I go too far, and before I get too heated, let me ask you a question. How many times have we, as church people, dehumanized people in the name of religion? How many times have we, as a church, dismissed people who don't meet our standard? You know, our economic standard, or our racial standard, or our gender standard, or our sexual orientation standard, or whatever the standard, our educational standard. How many times do we dismiss people for that? Now, there are some folks who would say, but Jesus was talking about pets. Think about Fifi and Bobo, you know, my fur babies. I love them more than I love my children. Let's be clear. Jesus was not talking about pets. I don't care how you try to dress it up. I don't care how you try to gussy it, make it pretty. Jesus was dehumanizing this woman. Because in the scriptures, whenever dogs are mentioned, it is to insult someone. Jesus is literally rebuking and demonizing and degrading this woman and her child, and I will say that it is because of her race. But Jesus is only doing what he had been taught. He's only following the example of the folks in his community. So, a couple eyes have glazed over already, and you're saying, God, why do black people always have to talk about racism? Why you always got to play the race card? Why now? Can't we just all get along? I don't see race. We can all just get along, but before that, we got some work to do. First, we have to be willing to acknowledge when we, corporate we, have participated in racism. Systematic, personal, whatever. We gotta own that. So, for about 3 seconds, I want us all to be real. If you can't be real with anybody else, please be real with yourself. We have all us, all y'all and me too, have had a racist thought at least once in our lives. It may have only been once, but all us, and I'm saying it like that for all us, have had at least one, even me. Second, we have to acknowledge that racism is a real thing. It is. Whether there are harsher rules for one group of people over another group of people based on skin color, that's racism. When you can't live in a neighborhood because of restrictive covenants, that's racism. When companies redline, yes, my friends, that is racism. We have to acknowledge that this is a problem. Again, I go back to the text. Jesus tells this woman that children, in this case, the Jews, are more deserving of the gifts of God than the dogs, otherwise known as the Gentiles. And Jesus deserved to be called out on his bad behavior. Third, silence equals consent. So we have to call out racism when we see it. We have to call it out for the evil that it is. The woman in the text did. She set Jesus straight. She literally calls him out and sets him straight. And yes, even though Jesus did heal her child, Jesus still is a jerk because he didn't heal her because it was the right thing to do. He healed her because the woman won the argument. Not only that, Jesus treats this non-Jewish woman with a severity that he has not shown to anybody else who has sought healing. Going through the crowd, the woman with the issue of blood touched him. Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" He didn't ask what dog did it. However, this woman, this brilliant woman, turns the tables on Jesus, and she uses Jesus' own technique to her own advantage. Yeah, Lord, you're right. The dogs may not be worthy of the fruit, but at least they get the crumbs that fall under the table. Jesus, you're totally wrong about feeding the children first. But there's still something left over for those that you think are undeserving. And hear me clearly, I'm not saying that the poor, people of color, the disenfranchised, or sexual minorities should just get crumbs at all. However, what I am saying is that if you say that we deserve nothing, I came here to tell you that everybody deserves the basics, if nothing else. So, a moment of confession. This is an uncomfortable story for me. This was an uncomfortable sermon to write. This is not the sermon that I started out writing. But talking about racism is messy. And if we're honest, so is being in community. Exposing racism can be like lancing a boil. I know we have at least one healthcare professional in the room. It's messy, it's stinky, it's painful, but in order for the healing to begin, you have to lance it. You gotta expose it. And I know that Jesus' his behavior in this interaction is disconcerting. I get it. And he was wrong. But we can learn something from Jesus in this transaction. Once he realizes that he's wrong, even though he heals the child for the wrong reason, he tries to get it right. We should follow Jesus' example. My friends, we are all going to mess up. We are all going to say things that are inappropriate. If you can't say amen, say ouch. We are all going to do that. And we do that, we have to own our bad behavior and do the right thing. So before I take my seat, I love Broadway musicals. My partner was not here this morning, loves them even more than I do. And whenever I'm working on a sermon, especially one that has social implications, I like to look at musicals because a lot of times musicals talk about the things that we don't want to talk about. Now, I'm not a songwriter. I'm a singer, but I'm not a songwriter. But I know a good lyric when I see one. And Oscar Hammerstein II wrote one that knocked it out of the park. Taken from the blockbuster South Pacific, in which the issue of racial prejudice is candidly exposed, he wrote the following. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made and people whose skin is of a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you're 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people, your relatives or preachers or neighbors or friends hate. You've got to be carefully taught. So today, I propose that we carefully teach something else. Love and acceptance. That, my friends, we can get right. Amen.